We've all heard the stories. Some of us may even know someone who seemingly has a miraculous recovery from a chronic disease, such as lung cancer, heart disease, or some other severe sickness that seemingly has them on their deathbed, and yet they manage to heal. Are healing miracles possible? We're going to discover that yes, they are, and we're going to see specifically how. Stay with me as you hear and understand this true story of healing that I'm going to share with you based on chapter 23 of The Power of Awareness, and teacher Neville Goddard will explain, and we'll hear the details from the individuals involved of how a chronic disease was healed. Hello, this is Robert Mead, and I personally have used this mindset, these methods that I'm going to share with you, and so I ask you to give them close attention, especially when it comes to healing and your health. This story is taken from The Power of Awareness, chapter 23, story number 6. Now, keep in mind, these are true stories, so we're going to give special attention to what specifically was directed for them to do, to heal, and how they specifically followed it. And we'll be able to apply this in our lives. And by the way, before we get started, if any of you are here particularly because you've had an experience of healing or know about these stories and would like to share, please share in the comments either your personal journey or that of another that you know that has experienced some level of healing using similar methods that we're going to talk about now. So I will look for those comments and they will benefit others as they read also. Thank you ahead of time for that. With that, let's get started. Only the most complete and intense use of the law of assumption could have produced such results in this extreme situation. Now, the following scenario will hit home with many of you reading and listening to this, who either yourself or a family or friend, a member of your life, has experienced or is experiencing sickness. So let's give attention, as we can certainly all identify with this situation. 4 years ago, a friend of our family asked that I talk with his 28-year-old son, who was not expected to live. He was suffering from a rare heart disease. This disease resulted in a disintegration of the organ. Long and costly medical care had been of no avail. Again, I'd love to see your comments. Most of us have gone through this type of situation with ourselves again, or a personal family member that we've lost. Tell your story. Tell me about it in the comments. I would love to hear. And I would also like to hear how you feel about the suggestions given here for an alternate way to heal. Please share your comments and your story with me. Our story continues. Doctors held out no hope for recovery. For a long time, the son had been confined to his bed. His body had shrunk to almost a skeleton, and he could talk and breathe only with great difficulty. His wife and 2 small children were home when I called, and his wife was present throughout our discussion. Now, here's where I'll invite all of you friends reading and listening to this story to give attention. Here is where the directives are given of how to heal. So pay close attention and see if you can identify with the solution given. Neville now shares with us how to heal. He says, I started by telling him that there was only one solution to any problem. Notice that, friends, to any problem. That solution was a change of attitude. Since talking exhausted him, I asked him to nod in agreement if he understood clearly what I said. And this he agreed to do. So we've set the stage here. This young man is so incapacitated he can barely nod, and yet he can hear well, he can understand. He understood what Neville, the mystic teacher who was teaching him how to heal, was giving him. He understood him and was able to nod in agreement that he fully understood. Let's continue. I described the facts underlying the law of consciousness. In fact, that consciousness was the only reality. I told him that the way to change any condition, was to change his state of consciousness. Earlier we saw the change of attitude. Now it's compared to a state of what we are conscious of, a state of consciousness. Again, I told him that the way to change any condition was to change his state of consciousness concerning it. So you need to change your attitude or what you're conscious of concerning that situation, any problem, any situation, in this case, disease. So he had to actually change his mindset, attitude, what he was consciously aware of in connection with this debilitating problem he was facing. Now, if any of you have had positive experiences with or otherwise, if you're skeptical, I still would love to see your comments, because if you follow science and the latest in psychology connected to physical fitness and wellness, it is not far-fetched to understand that our mental state, our attitude, our beliefs, the way we feel about our lives directly affects our health. We know that anxiety and sickness and disease are all tied together because of one's attitude and thinking. So this is not far-fetched, but Neville's going to take it to another level for us here, and that's what I want you to see here. There's a whole new level of how he gives using the mind to cure here that I really hope you give attention to. Ready? Neville now follows up by saying, as a specific aid in helping him to assume the feeling of already being well, I suggested that in imagination, he see the doctor's face expressing incredulous amazement in finding him recovered. Not recovering, recovered. Contrary to all reason. From the last stages of an incurable disease, that he see him double-checking. So he's seeing the doctor double-checking him in his examination. And hear him saying over and over, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Now, this young man, remember, he's in a fourth stage of an incurable disease, a heart disease, completely debilitated. His body is shrunk to skeleton. He can't barely move. And all he can do is nod because he understood the directives being given to him. And so, how many of us need to wait till we're on our deathbed and try every typical medical solution of chemotherapy and you name it, all the poisons and all the methods given to us by the medical world, and see our loved ones die, right? Or see that's not healing ourselves using those methods. Yes, maybe temporarily, maybe partially, but not really healing us. How many times do we have to experience that or see that in our world and with our loved ones before we become desperate enough, you could say, to try something like this? Is it really necessary to get that desperate when you could actually use this before you reach that extreme state? As we continue, notice what the young man who was dying and his wife did with the directive. So it's not just what we hear we should do, but it's he actually putting our heart into doing it that makes the difference. Notice what follows and how they specifically did what Neville suggested they do. He not only understood all this clearly, but he believed it implicitly. You notice that? He not only understood, but he believed implicitly. He promised that he would faithfully follow this procedure. His wife, who had been listening intently, assured me that she, too, would diligently use the law of assumption and her imagination in the same way as her husband. The following day, I sailed for New York, all this taking place during a winter vacation in the tropics. So let's pause and consider before we continue. The directive was given of what he should do and how he would imagine the doctor and the doctor checking him and seeing that he's perfectly healthy and responding in shock. Well, this is absolutely a miracle. It's absolutely a miracle. Now, would it take some creative imagining and faith to even begin to imagine that when you're laying there as sick as this young man was? Absolutely. Would it be wonderful to have the support of a wife and partner who would support you in that? Maybe a family member, somebody else that says, you know what, I'll do this with you. I'll imagine it with you. We're going to stick to this plan that Neville has given us. We're going to imagine it true, and we're going to believe implicitly that it will work. So you see how belief comes into play? And this actually affected him on a cellular level because it was driven into his subconscious, connected to the universe, and the healing began because of his faithfully following out the exact procedure and suggestion that was given by this healer and coach, right? So it doesn't matter what great advice we are given, what you see online, whether it be this suggestion of healing or another. If you don't fully buy into it and go for it, should you expect a healing? Should you expect results? I love it how Neville says, for any condition, for any circumstance, this exact same procedure is used. So whether it's to find love, to get a better job, to make more money, or to heal yourself, to have better health, better relationships with your kids, move somewhere, change your life, all of it comes down to imagining it true and believing implicitly that it works. That's fundamental. And that's what I find fascinating about this story. It's not just about healing, but can be applied to all areas of your life. And again, please comment below whether you agree or disagree. I'd love to hear your experience if you've actually attempted this type of healing in your life or in your family. Now read the rest of the story. Neville states, several months later, I received a letter saying that the son had made a miraculous recovery. On my next visit, I met him in person. He was in perfect health, actively engaged in business and thoroughly enjoying the many social activities of his friends and family. What he says next to Neville shows the importance of belief, faith, and following instructions to the T. And belief. Notice, Neville states, he told me that from the day I left, he never had any doubt that it would work. Again, no doubt, complete faith. He described how he had faithfully followed the suggestion. Faithfully followed the suggestion. Did exactly what was suggested that he do. Again, He had faithfully followed the suggestion I had made to him, and notice, day after day, had lived completely in the assumption, the belief of already being well and strong. That's another really important key. You must believe that you already have it. You must believe that you're already healthy. Now, these points I drive home in my other videos, which I will leave a link to, on how to use the law of assumption. Not just in healing, which is an amazing example, but in every area of your life, the same principle applies, that you must assume that you have it already. You must believe it to see it. Not see it to believe it. Believe it to see it. Again, please give me your comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, negative or positive. Please be kind, but I'd love to have you share with me what you think of what we just did in this story, and whether you have friends or whether you yourselves, any of you, have attempted any of these curing suggestions, or have used the law of assumption in other ways, the way I have, to bring about specific results for desires you have in your life. Let's see how things worked out for this gentleman. Notice the story. Now, 4 years after his recovery, he is convinced that the only reason he is here today is due to his successful use of the law of assumption. I thank you ahead of time for liking, of course, subscribing, but especially for your comments. I honestly would love to get some feedback. This is Robert Meade from the Power of Imagination, wishing you good health, and the best is yet to come.